Yeah, you're
Yeah.
going live. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Azure Cloud Native. So today, this evening, we have a session on security and architecture insights by Raju and Deepthi. So sorry I pronounced it wrong, and it should be a good one. So who would like to go first? Deepthi, you want to
Yeah.
just share your screen?
Yeah, sure.
Would you like to take question throughout the presentation or at the end?
I can take the questions at the end.
Okay, sure. Yeah,
Okay.
read you on screen just in case you want to ask questions as
Yeah.
well. Share your screen. So I just
Are you able to see
the
my
fl-
screen?
yeah, the floor is yours. Yep, I can see.
Awesome. Thank you. So, hello everyone. Thank you so much for taking your time for being here today. And thank you so much, Nicholas, for giving me this great opportunity to present on this topic. So today I'm going to talk about security for Azure SQL. So this will be like if you're not familiar with Azure or Azure security concepts, I think this will be a great overview of going through all the different layers of security we have in Azure, especially for Azure SQL. But if you are familiar, this will be definitely a refresh of already the knowledge that you have. So I'm going to complete this session in about like 40 minutes, but here and there, if I go late, please feel free to stop me so that I can rush a little bit. Um, so a little bit about me, I'm a database administrator having about like 8 years of experience as a DBA, and also I'm a data platform MVP, and I do organize couple of user groups and a couple of different conferences, virtual conferences, and I'm also a core committee member for the PAS, Professional Association of SQL Server. It's a data community conference. Here we do it, usually we do it in Seattle, United States every year. So yeah, that's a lot about me. But if you have any questions or if you want to contact me later, LinkedIn is the best way to contact me. So yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. So we have different layers of security in Azure, right? The outer layer of security is network security, access management, threat protection, information protection, and before even touching the customer data, data is very valuable because we have a um, important information in it, right? Any business have the PII data and all sort of different, just like the way we protect the money, we need to protect the data. So, in order for any bad actor trying to touch your core customer data, they have to cross each and every layer of security in place in Azure. So, we are going to talk about each of these layers today. As an overview. So let's get started with the top level security, which is network security. So in Azure SQL, we have four different layers of network security. And here you see four different columns, right? Allow access to Azure services all the way up to private link. So as we move from left to right, we see it is in the more secure manner. Private link is the most secure, and allow access to Azure services is the least secure. Now we will be talking about each of this one. So allow access to Azure services is just like a tick of a button that you have. You can either tick it on or off, but once you build the Azure SQL, you have this option, allow access to Azure services. So what if you go ahead and click it, you go ahead and turn it on, you're saying that any Azure services, right? Any other Azure services can connect to my Azure SQL. Your on-prem SQL servers can't connect to the Azure SQL, but this is all about like any other services in Azure can connect to the database, which is least secure because this have internet connectivity. All of these Azure services can other Azure services can also connect to your database. And when you do the NS lookup, the DNS hierarchy information and where your database is hosted and control like region information where your database is hosted and control ring information and even the IP address will be public, which is not secure. But you may be asking a question like, if it is not secure, why do we even have this option, right? For the development purposes, for the low level environments, if you wanted to build your database quickly but not worry about the network security, but then test your databases and see the connectivity to your application and do some sort of testing. That is the only purpose for this allow access to Azure services. That's when you can turn it on, but it is not at all recommended to turn this option on for any of your environments apart from the development. Now let's go to the next layer of security, network security, firewall rules. Firewall rules, just like the way you create the firewall rules to any of the services you connect on-prem, it is the same way you add the IP address as a firewall rule in Azure as well. So here you can even provide the IP address of your on-prem SQL server so that they can connect to your Azure SQL database. This is a similar way you create the firewall rules on your on-prem SQL servers. So even this is not secure because it have the public IP address and but still it allows the on-prem connections. But when you do the DNS, when you do the NS lookup, it shows the information publicly, region control ring information. Still, some of the information is still visible. It's not that secure, but it is definitely secure more than allow access to Azure services. Now let's go to the virtual network rules. So let's say we have multiple networks and we hosted our Azure SQL database in a particular virtual network, and we connect multiple virtual networks together to this one virtual network rule, one virtual network where you hosted your database. You just create one virtual network rule which will get the private IP address within that particular virtual network. And when you do the NS lookup, you you still see some of the public information like region control ring, but here you get the private IP address. The next level of security, network security, is private link. Here you get the private IP address, you create a private endpoint. So it is the most secure ones because once you create the private endpoint for your database, you get a private IP address and you block the public access. The internet is all gone. So even when you do the NS lookup, it will show you the private. It show you the private address, and it will never will show you the actual address or region information, control ring information. Everything is secure, and it won't show up when you do the NS lookup. And only the services which have access to this private endpoint can only connect it to your database. None other services, because internet is turned off, none of the other services can connect. Now that's an overview of network security, right? But where do we see these options within the Azure portal? In the Azure portal, I took a demo here, uh, which is known as a SQL Server security demo. And if you build your Azure SQL database or SQL managed instance, you have at the server level as well as at the database level, you have this security pane left side your screen. So we are going to talk about each of this layer, right? So let's click on networking, and underneath the networking, you see all of these four options that we talked about. At the bottom of the page, you see allow Azure services and resources to access the server. Do not click that button on except for the development purposes. Like I said, it's not secure, right? And then the second one, a little bit top on that, you see the firewall rules. You go ahead and add the services that you wanted to access your SQL, Azure SQL. So I try to add my local computer IP address because that's where would like to connect to my Azure SQL by using the management studio. So I added my local client IP address here. So once I do that, I'll go to my local SSMS, my management studio, and I try to connect. It will allow me to connect to the Azure SQL database because I added that firewall rule. Now, let's go to the private link. If you also see here the virtual network rule. You can create the virtual network rule, but let's see the last option, which is private endpoint, right? It's still in the different tab at the networking tab. Once you click on the security networking, you see this in the private access tab. And I have already created the private endpoint here. You require only some information I did not show you the detail of how to create the private endpoint. You need to know like the subscription details and where you are creating, on which virtual network you are creating, all that information. But once you create that, I try to access my Azure SQL database on a virtual network uh, which is tied to this Azure SQL database, and I try to see the client net address here from the system execute connections. And once I execute it, I got an IP address which is highlighted here, 10.0.0.7. And to confirm that the information is shown correctly, I went to the virtual machine where I'm connecting from and where I executed that query. I went ahead and saw it showed me the private IP address, but not any other details. Like it will show the private IP address, and it also have the public IP address, but it will only show you the private IP address. Now, let's see a little bit about the identity and access management. So when again, this is like I'm not going in depth, but this is just an overview of the security layers, right? So we have two different types of um, access management here: authentication and authorization. Authentication is all about like if- when you're trying to connect to the Azure SQL database, you need to prove that you are the right person trying to connect to the database. So, how do you prove that? By using the multi-factor authentication, like the authentication app that you have on your phone. Once you try to log in, it will give you a code which you need to approve, and that's one of the way that you can authenticate and prove that you are the right person. Both for the Azure SQL and the managed instance, both of them supports the Entra ID, which is at the time it's called Azure Active Directory. But in both Entra ID and SQL authentication can be chosen, but you can also only choose Entra ID authentication only. So when you build the Azure SQL database, you can you will be giving the login ID and password while creating that logical server, and that login id and password will automatically will become the server level principal at the server level. And for the managed instance, while you are building the managed instance, you'll give the login id and password that will automatically will become the sysadmin server role. And authorization is all about like what objects the user needs to have the access to, right? It can be the database role, custom roles. For the Azure SQL and managed instance, both of them will support the database roles and custom roles, but you can also give the security. We can also give the security at the level of row level security as well, um, as a principle of least privilege. So there are like I mentioned, once you build the logical server, the login id and password that you will give while building the server, it will become the server admin. So here I gave the Deepthi as a login id that will automatically become a server admin role. So there are a couple of role-based access control, like what can and cannot be done at the resource, all the way from the resource level till at the subscription level, resource group, and at the resource level. We have certain default role base certain roles. The top three roles that we have by default are owner, contributor, and reader. There are several other different roles as well, but we are going to focus more on these default roles: owner, contributor, and reader. Owner can do everything, they can read, modify, and assign, but contributor can only read and modify, but they can't assign. Like the owner, they can't assign other people to become the contributor or any other role. Reader, as the name mentions, they can only read the resources, and these permissions can be inherited all the way from the subscription to the resource. Inside the resource level, they can be inherited as well. So to see um, where these roles are at the logical server level, which is DG test server, we need to go to the access control IAM and click on that, and you need to first try to add a role assignment to see all of these roles. So I click on add and add role assignment, which gave me the top three roles, which is owner, contributor, and reader. But if you see, there is a other list of roles that we have. So once you click on the role, and then you can go ahead and add the members and then assign them to have that access to those resources. And as per the logins, users, these are within the databases, right? So what is the difference between managed instance and Azure SQL database? Mostly both of them have the similar kind of roles like logins and users. Both of them can have the intra ID as a server admin, because like a user should be the intra ID server admin. They need to have the highest privileges to go ahead and create other users and add other users to the databases. So they can support SQL as well as Entra ID logins. At the database level, they can have the database users as well as the contained users. Contained users do not have the login, but they have the direct user with a password. So they can directly jump into the resources that they have access to without having a login associated with that user. But the main difference, both of them have the same difference, but same items, but with the Azure SQL database, you can design the separate roles. You have the separate additional roles, like for example, the login manager, DB manager, just to limit the people to have the server level admin role. They limited by adding these additional roles like login manager and DB manager. So, data encryption is a very big topic, but I'll try to cover what type of data encryption we have and what is the use of each of them. So, underneath the data encryption, we have encryption in transit, encryption at rest, and encryption in use. Encryption in transit is all about like while your data is being moved out of the database to the application and from the application to the database, is your data protected in between the transit, right? It is automatically protected by default by using the TLS version, transparent layers security, and it is always encrypted and it is enforced. Encryption at rest is all about the securing your data on the disk, like your data files, log files, backup files. Again, um, this is not the different kind of. This is only the encryption at the disk level, right? Not like kind of column level security that you place, like to not show up the column information while you run the queries. That is a different thing. We are going to talk about that, but um, this is only at the level of disk while your data is being moved in and out of the disk, whether it is being protected, right? And it is always encrypted again by the TDE. We are going to talk about that as well in the coming slides. And the last one is encryption in use. What about the queries that I'm executing, right? While it is being processed within the SQL engine, is my data being protected during that time? It is always protected as well and using the data enclaves. So let's talk about the first one, encryption in transit. Like I mentioned, it is an industry standard protocol by using the TLS version. So from your end, this is always encrypted and it is enforced, right? But from your end, you need to make sure from the application, your encrypted connection from application to be turned on. From your application, this option needs to be turned on. And from your Azure SQL side, the TLS version should be aligned with the application. Your application should support that TLS version. So as years goes by, there are new TLS versions coming up and they are deprecating the old ones. So while you are upgrading, you need to make sure your application will be able to support that TLS version. So where do we see this TLS version, right? We are talking in this option is available at the networking level. So once you go to the security networking blade, go to the third tab, connectivity, and underneath the connectivity, you see encryption in transit option. And there you will see in the drop down all the TLS versions. And as the TLS version gets deprecated, you need to make sure you are upgrading that and also make sure your application aligns and supports that TLS version. So encryption at rest, like I mentioned, it is only at the disk level. Backup files, database files, log files, while they should be decrypted while moving out of the disk, and then as they are saving back to the disk, they need to be encrypted back again. And this is enabled by default, and we have two options here to choose. You can either allow Microsoft to manage that, which is known as Microsoft Managed Key. And if you choose this option, it is just a radio button that you choose. And after clicking that, Microsoft will take care of like password rotations of these keys and all of that, right? They will be taking care of that. But if you choose to manage your own keys, that is known as bring your own key, BYOK, which can be stored in your key vaults. You can build the keys, save it in the key vault, and you are responsible for the key generation and rotation access, giving access to those keys. You are responsible for that. So where do we see this option, right? Again, I'm going to the SQL Server security demo, and underneath the security blade, you go to the TDE, transparent data encryption, and there you have two different options, like I mentioned. Microsoft Managed and Customer Managed. Microsoft Managed is nothing but the first option. Service Managed Key is nothing but the Microsoft Managed. The next one is Customer Managed Key. So here, if you choose Service Managed Key, all you'll do is to click on that radio button. But let's see how we do it. Bring your own key option, right? So underneath this key selection method, you need to first select the key and then choose the key for this option TDE, right? But I do not have a key right now. I need to build a key. So in order to build a key, first we need to build the key vault and then create the key and then save the key in the key vault and then come back here again to choose the key. So first, we need to create the key vault. Couple of options that you have, very simple to create, and it is also a cheap option. You can choose as many key vaults as you want, uh, and you can divide and then manage the keys based upon your clients. You can manage the key vaults. You can have as many as you can. And here, I created a key vault, which is known as secured KV. There, I will first have to create the key. So click on the objects. Underneath the objects, click on the key. And here I already created two keys, two different keys. So I would like to show you one of the key. So I clicked on security demo one, which is a key that I created, have its own current version. So the current version will be automatically popped up, but you need to focus more on the activation and the expiration. Remember, we are managing these keys, so we will be setting up the expiration dates. So once I click on that, I will I can show you like what all information you need to build this key, right? To create this key. So that there are certain automated automated generations here. Like for example, the key version, like um, the GUID there that you see on the top, that is automatically created. Most of the time, we need to focus more on the set activation date, set expiration date, as well as what whom do you want to give access to this key. You can either give it here, or once you create the key, then you can go to the access management, and also you can give the permissions to this key. So once I build that key in the same key vault, I'll go to the access policies, and then I'll give the permissions to unwrap and wrap the key to use that key to the necessary people, right? So I gave that permissions, and now I'll go back to the TDE option underneath the SQL Server security demo. Now I would like to go ahead and choose the key, right? So click on the key. Like if you already have the key and if you want to change, you click on change. You either way you have to come to this page to choose the key. So I click on change key here, and then you will have the subscription details that you need to give from the drop down menu. And by selecting the key vault, you'll get a drop down menu of all the key vaults that you have. You can choose the key vault. Once you click on the key vault, all the keys will be also like popped up. From the drop down, you can choose the key, and then As you choose the key, you that version, that particular version for that key is populated automatically. So when your key gets expired, you have to come here and then change it to the new version of that particular key. And then now I'll go ahead and select, and then now click on save for this particular key to be saved. And this key will actually save your data files on the disk. The last one is encryption in use. So this is a this is a client-side encryption technology. Only the client will have the access to view the data as it is, but as the data being moved and get processed within the SQL engine, the data is still being encrypted. So this is they use some technology known as data enclaves to make this happen by using a client driver. So the driver will be in between the database client as well as the database engine. So this SQL client driver is responsible to um, cipher text, meaning like it will encrypt the data as it is being processed within the database engine. Only the data will be shown as plain text only to the client. And this secured enclaves is not open to all different kinds of query. There are limitations to this, and only certain queries which uses like the pattern matching with the like operator, like range queries, less than, greater than, sorting, indexing, those sort of queries can only be useful for the secure enclaves, but they have several limitations to this. And the other one is depending upon the like data protection. When it comes to the data protection, dynamic data masking is one of the protection layer. Now, this is not the transparent data encryption. This is transparent data encryption is at rest, which will only protect the data files, log files, backup files on the drives, right? But that is not the dynamic data masking. If you have dynamic data masking enabled, that doesn't mean that they are protected on disk, two different things, right? But if you want to protect the data itself and give only certain permissions to the users to see the data as they query, that's when dynamic data masking comes in place. It is similar way like you do the dynamic data masking on-prem SQL servers to your data, column level data. Same way you do it here. But as you use the Azure portal to create, go to the database level because this is a data protection, right? So go to the database, underneath the database security, dynamic data masking, click on dynamic data masking and click on add mask. And you can drop down the schema table column. Once you click on the column, it will automatically give you the default mask function that you can choose, and then save it and then give permissions to unmask the data to specific users. The last one, this is not the last one, but last second one, threat protection and detection can be done by using the Azure Defender. And Azure Defender comes in two different flavors: SQL vulnerability assessment, which is kind of like once you build your Azure SQL database, it will go ahead and check. Once you enable the Azure Defender, it will go ahead and check for any vulnerability assessment based upon the standards of Microsoft. So they have couple of standards. They will compare your setup with their standard list of things, and then they will provide a huge list of like vulnerability assessment. Expect to get that list bigger, but then you can go ahead and view and then take action based upon that assessment list. The other one with the same Azure Defender is SQL threat protection. Is like any bad actor trying to access your um, database from a different location. You will get an alert. You can set up the alerts to receive the emails immediately for that. And also, underneath the threat protection, we have SQL auditing. Just like the way you audit your SQL databases on-prem, it is the same way you do it on the Azure portal as well. And all of this information, Azure Defender, SQL auditing, All of this information can be seen in a single pane by using the Azure Security Center. So for the Azure Defender, it is just a on-off button, and you'll be paying money for the service. So once you click on it, turn on, you need to provide the subscription details and storage account. Where do you want to store this information, right? Collected information, and you can send the scans to specific users if you have DB admins or anybody else who needs to get these reports. You can give those details and then click on OK. I have given it some time to capture that information. And then I came back to the security zone again underneath the server. I have clicked on security. Microsoft Defender for Cloud is where I can see these recommendations. If you would like to see more of like view additional recommendations, it gives the recommendations, findings, severity levels, high level, low level, and medium level. You can click on view additional recommendations to see more in detail on what all information we got it here. So it says like I would like to click more on like what are the recommendations for showing it as red. Those looks like the high priority. So I'll click on that to see. So you can either go to the server level Microsoft Defender for Cloud to see the information, and at the database level also you'll get this information as per the data within your database at the server level as well as the database level. So I click on Azure SQL database here, Adventure Works, security, Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and then view all recommendations. I clicked on that to get more details. And this is like a comparison to the standard of Microsoft for the Azure SQL database. And it gives like a couple of IDs here, vulnerability assessment findings. And we can go ahead and choose one of them. The first one, database owners are as expected, but it shows the severity is high. So I would like to see that one. Once I click on that, it will give you the description, and it will also show you the remediation and what is the problem. It shows like remove unnecessary database owners. So it looks like more than one person are the owners for this database, and it will give you the even the query, remediation query to remove the users as owners. You can either safely discard or you can add it to the baseline. But these are the kind of vulnerability assessment details you get it. And when comes to the auditing, right? You can click on, again, this is on or off button. Once you enable, it will go ahead and audit your databases within the server. So click on that, and you need to provide where you want to save the data, either a storage account or log analytics. If you do not have a workspace, you can create a workspace here itself and give the subscription details. And then the last option is to it asks you to either enable or disable the Microsoft support operations. Like if you have some issues with your database and if you need Microsoft support, they will first ask you to provide the logs. So enabling this option will give them the ability to go ahead and look into your logs. So it is recommended to turn it on. So once you turn it on, you can go ahead and view the logs at the database level as well. So I'm looking at the database level. Underneath the security, I went to auditing and view audit logs. So it will take me to the dashboard, the workspace dashboard, and I'll be clicking on the view dashboard, and it will give me, it automatically took me to the default workspace that I built. So it gave me two different data here, which is Azure SQL, the donut ring there, access to sensitive data. We are going to talk that in about Azure governance. That's related to Azure data governance. But the right side one is related to the auditing. So I'll click on that security insights and see. It looks like the audit distribution, and it completed the auditing on couple of events here. So I'll click on that to see more details. So here you will have the ability to go ahead and filter out what all information you choose. Here I took a sample of audit information um, just to show you how it will look like, what statement is being run, what database is being used, users, schema, everything. Just like the way you audit your on-prem SQL server, it is the same way you can see the information as well as you can run the query and then you can filter out the data as well. The last one, but not least, it's a data governance. It's nothing but classifying your data based upon the priority, like based upon their sensitivity labels. Like if you want to label certain columns within your tables as a sensitivity, like SSN or like passport number, date of birth, whatever it is, if you want to um, flag them as a sensitive label, data governance is a place where you can do it. Again, you have to go to the database at the database level. Underneath the security, you go to the data discovery and classification, and a couple of simple drop down. You get to choose the schema, table, and then column, and you can choose like information type, what type of information, and you can give the sensitivity label to it. Once you tag these, right, once you tag these columns, it will use it will use the SQL auditing to collect the information, just like the way it collects the auditing logs information. It will collect the same information, and it will um, collect if any person try to access these sensitivity columns. It will give all of that information under the data discovery and classification. And once you enable this option, it will go ahead and show you the results in the audit records itself. Within the same default workspace that I choose, I have a donut shown here, number of queries based upon the sensitivity labels, as well as by information type here. Um, so I click on that information type, which is green color donut button here. So I'll click on that to see similar kind of audit records, but this is specifically to only the only auditing on those particular sensitivity label columns, who accessed those sensitivity columns, and all of that information, like what kind of activity, database and table schema, all of that information is shown in the same audit logs. So this is just an overview of the different layers we have. But as an extension to this session, I have written several blog posts on my website. Um, Go to the category Azure on my website, you'll find it. But there are plenty of resources on YouTube from Microsoft Learn, where Anna Hoffman had a several series of videos, like 6 to 7 videos. Each video is about like 1.5 hours to go dive deep into each of these security layers in Azure. But I have created just one single video just to give an overview of what all we have here. Um, so one more time, I would like to thank you all for hanging in there and listening to my session. And thank you, Nicholas, for giving me this great opportunity.
Sorry, muted. Yeah, thanks. So we've got no question. It's probably mean that you explain it well. And
Mhm.
if there's any question, we'll get them to like message you and stuff of their
Yeah,
question.
they can definitely contact me on LinkedIn. I can provide more details if they want to.
Yeah, brilliant. Uh, have you got any question, Raju, for Deepthi? I don't know. Oh, he's muted as well. Sorry.
I'm feeling like back in 2020. Can you hear me? No, no, no. Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm good. Okay. I said no, but I think I found very interesting the last part from the security perspective.
Yeah.
And what are the features that can be used, because sometimes people forget about data transparency and other ways how you can secure your data in different ways using Entra ID and role-based authentication control on top of current features.
Okay.
Yep.
No worries.
All right then.
Yeah. So thanks,
Thank
Deepthi.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
I hope this session is recorded and I can view Radu's session as well later.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's recorded, so it's at the
awesome.
moment it's live.
Thank you so
So
much. And
yeah.
yeah, all the best to you, Radu, for your presentation.
Okay, thanks. So the next session is from Raju. He's going to speak about uh, architecture in AI, architecting in AI. So it should be a good one. If you share your screen, I would.
It should
Got
work
it.
now.
Yeah,
Okay,
there we go.
perfect.
Yeah, so it should be all good because all the buzzwords is AI now. So it should be good refresher for everyone.
Yes, so I have all the three buzzwords in one screen: AI, architecture, and cloud.
Nice.
So I hope that I got the interest of people.
Yep, so you can start. So it's off to you. So
Okay.
you
So
want.
hello, everybody. Thank you for joining this session. Thank you for making time. I don't want to take more than 30 minutes of your day, of your afternoon, of your morning, because I know that the session is recording. I hope at least that during the night you will sleep or watch Netflix. Um, in today's session, we'll touch a little bit how a cloud architecture should look like, especially when you want to use, you want to adopt, you want to empower your business using AI. Before going forward, I would like to thank you for invitation, for being part of this initiative, and I'm happy that I can share, I would say, my experience and my view regarding how AI is not only the shaping how we do business, but also the way how we need to design our current solutions. Who am I? My name is Radu von Volea. Nice meeting you all. I started my journey in cloud in 2009 on Microsoft Azure. And I think in 2014, 2015, things also started to get more seriously also on AWS from the product point of view that I was involved. And I would say that starting from 2010, around 99.9% of projects and applications that I was working were cloud related. I'm also a Microsoft Regional Director, Microsoft Azure MVP for a few years. And my background, or I started as a developer, and now I'm somewhere between development and infrastructure. So I have a very good ground in development that usually help me to understand how the end-to-end system would look like, what are the uh, what is the complexity, and what also is the challenges that the development team and the technical team could face up. I'm working as VP of Cloud for Endava for a while, and together we are modernizing, we are doing a cloud migration and adoptions of cloud solutions for our customers. Now, let's jump to the main topic. So, what is my mission? I'm just checking my watch. I have 28 minutes remain, and my main mission is the following: um, to scratch how a cloud architecture should look like. I will use examples from Azure world, but all of them can be mapped to AWS, to GCP, or even to private clouds, vendors, especially in Middle East and in Europe, where things are getting pretty serious from the private cloud point of view. And in the end, depending on how much time we will have, I have an hands-on example where we would simulate how we need to modernize our cloud solution to ensure that we can run AI payload on top of it. I don't want to go in numbers. How AI is changing the world, what is the value, what is the impact, we already know that. If you want to find more about that, feel free to Bing them on ChatGPT or on Copilot, and you will find a lot of information. So it's pretty easily, I think that we've seen this kind of slides too much. Now, let's understand a little bit what we have on the plate. And I think this is one of the biggest challenge. I remember that in 2020, 2021, I was talking about the challenges that technical team has to identify where they can run their workloads. Because you had around 20, 30 options on both AWS or on Azure, virtual machines, Lambda, Kubernetes, app services, blah, 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 blah. And the technical team had to decide, okay, what is the best service for my needs? And it's not easy. The same thing is nowadays with AI and ML. You have so many services from each cloud vendor. This is just a high level examples. There are more than that. And what does this mean? Is that you need a person that understands very well the ecosystem, understand exactly pro and cons, build from scratch, take an open source and run it and manage it, use an out-of-the-shelf service, or what, how. And on top of that, there are two, now there are more than two, but there are two basic services from which we start to think about ML and AI when we talk about cloud. At least on Azure, why I say more than that, because after build, uh, that took a few weeks ago, the plate is bigger and bigger, but mainly there are two options. One, the machine learning, Azure machine learning, where it's more about designing the model, optimizing the model, where the type of the teams that you have are like data scientists and people that understand exactly how the model is working, how you need to use statistical information, and so on. And on the other side, you have Azure OpenAI that is more on the consumer side, because you are taking a model, a pre-existing model, you just run it, you give it input, you get some output, no training required. It's pretty safe. I think that this kind of approach works very well in around 95% of the use cases. You might say, no, 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 it's only 50%. But what's funny is that in most of the cases, if you go in details for the rest of 45%, you'll find that people might not be aware of all the models are viable, or take a model, do some small configurations or some changes to the model, and they think that they started from scratch, but no, they took a pre-trained model. They don't. It was more configuration than building the model by themselves. Why is this is too important? Because in both cases of any other kind of services that you would use, you need to think about, okay, what would be the impact of using a service like this in my current solution? If in 2021, 2022, we were asking ourselves a similar situation when we had that bubble with everything, everybody was doing big data, everybody was doing data analytics and so on. Now it's a similar one. No, I'm not saying it's a bubble, but we need to consider what is the impact from the network, from the computation, from the storage, from the security, and so on. And these are one of the first topics that I want to cover today. How the cloud ecosystem looks like, what we need to consider. We'll take a look on 4 or 5 specific Azure services that I consider them very important and relevant in the AI and ML space. And first of all, we need to see what are the challenges, what are the limitations, because you need to know exactly with what you're working with, what would be the impact. And before going to the classical ones, I want to give you a more concrete example. Sometimes I'm working on a system. Let's say that the system, the current consumption per year from Azure for Azure infrastructure, IaaS, PaaS, and some SaaS goes to around 1 million, 1 million pounds. The customer and the team is looking to integrate an AI. Perfect. Let's say open AI with some new features on a new business stream. That's perfectly. They do the estimation from the additional costs. Perfect. It's 100K per year. The customer say, oh, that's peanuts. Let's go with it. and they go in production. Now we have only the cost dimension. And after the first month, they look at the budget and they see an increase of cost with not only 10% of that open AI that they have there, of the service of Azure OpenAI, they see an increase of 20, 30, 40, even 50% on Azure services, on Azure infrastructure. Why this is happening? Well, it's normal because they are using more bandwidth, they move more data, they do more API request to storage because that system needs to be fed, right? It's interacting more with the existing system. All these kind of things needs to be taken into consideration, and we just cover. So even from the budget, you need to think about what is the impact and to do the right budget for that. And then we see, for example, other challenges and limitations that are more closer to us that I would say are more buzzwords like data privacy, ethical consideration, technical limitation, complexity. One good example that this year I started to see that it's coming to take a shape. It's about data sensitivity, and especially last year it was pretty common to see customers that were making accessible without wanting internally to sensitive data. Now they accept the cost that is coming with a governance layer, with a data governance layer on top of the solution. I will skip the ethical consideration and bias, and I prefer not to go in deep because now this is a pretty hot topic and it would take us at least a few hours to take a look at all the perspectives. If we take a look on the technical limitation and complexity, we are still facing the integration complexity and lack of skills because there are a lot of additional skills that you need to have to be able to do it right. And the last thing that I want to highlight is the legal and regulatory compliancy challenges because you need all the time to ensure, especially if you go with a cloud vendor and you're using an AI service from that cloud vendor, that that instance of the AI or ML is running in the region, in the country where the customer do business. Because you can end up without knowing, oh yeah, we will use that AI service from the cloud vendor. That's great. You do the implementation, you do the POC. Maybe you're not using their region because you're not aware of that, or you're aware but you already sold the solution, and then you end up to go to the customer and say, we have a problem. That feature is not yet available there, or is available but data is transferred to another location. That's something that we need to take a look on. Now, going from challenges, I want to highlight now 3 key areas of modernization, of cloud modernization that needs to be done. The first one is scalability and performance bottlenecks. Because you need to scale not only the AI from the GPU, TPU, blah, blah, blah point of view, but also you need to be able, before starting to integrate AI, to ensure that the current system can scale manually or automatically at the level where the current business flow can pass normally, and also the rest of the AI new capabilities can run, can work, can support business without any kind of problems. The second thing is overcoming AI data silos, and especially everything that is related to where you keep the data, how you keep the data, because when you're starting to use AI, you need to ensure that you have data in one place. You don't have data across multiple locations. It might not sound so complex, but if the customer have data on multiple sites, then you need to see, okay, how I can put them in one place. Can I do that? Uh, can I move them from the legal point of view, from multiple countries in one place? What are the costs, and many more. The third one that I think that it's pretty funny, because how I see it, the balance between innovation and compliancy. If you put too much governance layer on top of anything, especially on the AI, ML, and how it's used, people will not use it too much. If you provide too much freedom, people might use it in a wrong way. And I'm not saying this that they will destroy your system or a business. It's more about exposing maybe your data to people that doesn't need to have access to it, or moving data to location that shouldn't happen, and so on. And it's very hard to find the right balance between these two. The fourth one that I provided an example, I think 5 or 10 minutes ago, it's about the costs. What is the right level of performance to feed the AI, to feed your current business? Because as, for example, when you build a system, a latency or a response time between half a second and 5 seconds can be 100 times order of magnitude from the cost, or 10 times more. Does it really impact the business? The same thing is with the AI. What is the level of I'm trying to avoid to call latency. What is the right value of correctness of the response that you get from the AI, and from the speed accessing to all the knowledge base that you might have, versus the cost that you need to support? And as for innovation and compliance, you need to find also a balance between uh, these two. And the last one is regarding deployments, because sometimes it's very easy to build a model in a sandbox to be able to test, but you can, when you deploy it at scale, you just realize, well, for 100 users in parallel was okay, but for 1,000 or for 10,000 or for 500,000, things doesn't scale as expected. Or, going back to the first one, I have some bottlenecks that I cannot manage. And because of this, we need to identify what are the keys of success, what are the most important services, what are the most important components that we need to have there, to have them in place, to be able to ensure that the system can handle the payload of an AI ML system. Um, from my point of view, the key of successful AI system is not only the AI, it's not only the model, it's not only the AI ML service that you're using. It's also about what is your cloud adoption. What is the level of cloud modernization that you've done to your application, to your infrastructure, to be able to ensure that your system is running efficient, it's scalable, is using modern services. A very simple example is not using Azure VMs or EC2 machines. It's not because it's wrong, but they will not scale so easy. The cost of them might not be so acceptable. Or maybe you're using VMs with some licensing server, and you realize, oops, to be able to manage the demand, I need to buy 1,000 more licenses of a specific application or systems that is not cheap. And then you need to see exactly if you do the operational, the observability at a near real-time way, because you will need it. Because there will be more traffic, that more things will happen, and you need to have control of all of them. And when we talk about this, we need to take into consideration scalability and performance, auto scaling, It's a must. It's not something that is optional. If you want to use AI and ML, autoscaling is mandatory because there are two options. The system will be too slow and will crash, or the bill at the end of the month will be huge because you will not use all the resources that you pre-allocated. Unified data platforms, having one warehouse, one lake for everything. This is something that you need to consider. Even if it sounds impossible in some use cases, you need to see, okay, how at least I can have all the data for a specific business stream where I put in some AI ML capabilities to have all the data in one place. Avoid to move data, avoid to access too many repos because things will get ugly. Before starting the AI ML journey, you need to ensure that you have the full DevOps journey of your current application. And then, depending on the case, you go to the ML ops journey plus the automation of deploying your models of your AI services in such a way that human interaction will be more than approvals and different checks than doing uh, the uh, manual, but then doing the manual steps to it. And now it's the last one that I think that 2025 is the right year that is offering us tools that are really working that can make our life much, much easier, from building the AI solution to doing the configuration and to doing the deployments. 2 years ago, it was a nightmare because there are a lot of things that you had to configure manually. You've done a lot of things by yourself, and it was something like doing a data migration from, let's say, from SQL Server to Azure SQL without any kind of support of a tool, manual. And you had an error, you would come back to the dashboard. Or, for example, if you're a little bit older, do a full manually creation and configuration of a SQL farm cluster. That was a nightmare without any kind of semi-automatical tools. There are some other things that I'm saying them, most of them are not buzzword, but are pretty well known and common, like security and compliance, cost efficient, real-time analytics, and interoperability. I think that interoperability is something that we need to be sure that we have, especially from the API point of view. If you don't have an API that can interact in or out, ingest or egress from an AI system, you should come back to the board and see if you can build this API. There's another whole discussion about interoperability, about data access. I'm not referring here to the warehouses, to the data lakes, like Fabric. It's more about very specific storages or data storage on different types, and if you want to expose them, and how you expose them, through API to AI, or through without an API, or through an API, and through a way how you can control it. It's again, especially this discussion is important if you don't have an identity access management system very granular to the database. For older databases and storages, this is something that you need to consider, because role-based access control or something similar are crucial here. Now, I have 3 or 4 minutes more. The last section that I want to cover is what are the key of AI modernization of a cloud service. The first service that I think that is very important nowadays, it's again like a buzzword, Azure Kubernetes Service. It offers us, and it solves exactly the problem regarding scaling fast, having pools of different type of VMs, with GPU, without GPU, with more memory, with less memory. Basically, exactly the ecosystem that you end up from the workload point of view in a production application that that has multiple subsystems with different needs, Maybe you have your own models that are running there with their own needs, and then you can create that environment that can fetch very good computation power for each need, can scale easily, and can provide a fast communication between the nodes. The second one is Azure Functions, Lambda in AWS. They are relevant in the AI because sometimes, or in most of the cases, especially you have triggers. AI is triggering something. This kind of trigger doesn't make sense to run all the time or to have dedicated resources that are waiting. And Azure Functions work great. If you need to do a trigger based on something that AI is identifying, Azure Functions works great. Another situation is that in the flow that you're defining, part of your AI solution, you need to do an external call. You need to fetch some data, you maybe some small, not really a ETL, but you need to fetch some data, do some transformation, and come back to a response. Asynchronous sync. Again, function is a very, very good fit. It's simple. You have dynamic scaling, and it's very easy to integrate in a current ecosystem. The third one is Microsoft Fabric, where you have the ability to provide one place where you store all your knowledge base, your data, without taking into account what kind of format, what kind of data, relational, non-relational, files, XML, PDF, you name it. Fabric is coming, is providing you one big happy location, house, where you can put everything, very well connected, at least with Microsoft AI and ML stack. And you just can start to do the training, to optimize your pipeline, and in the end, to focus more on the business, focus more on the outcomes of the AI integration, and less on losing time on how you store the data, how you access it, how you do the data governance on top of it, and so on. So you have one place for all. The fourth one, application gateway. They are super duper important because in the end, that system that you're building on using, let's say, OpenAI, on Azure, or you have your own model, you don't want to expose directly to the internet, to your internal users and so on. There might be some change. There are some security layers. There's a lot of things that you want to have control, to do the versioning and so on. And you need something between your solution as you have for your API and the consumer. Azure Application Gateway is a very good example that can provide protection, can provide you endpoint scalability, and do the traffic balance and all the other things that are required. But this is not enough. And this is where an event-based system is important. You talk about asynchron, you talk about cases where you cannot handle the load that is coming to your AI solution, or the output it's too high from the AI. And yes, you scale, but how fast you scale? How fast you spin up, for example, in Azure Kubernetes Service, 10, 20 additional nodes. You don't have an SLA. You might think, oh, it's 10 seconds. Might be 10 seconds, might be 1 minute, might be 10 minutes. If you are using some nodes that are not very common, a lot of memory, a lot of CPU, or some, I don't know what anything else you could have there, you might wait for a few hours, so you need it. It's more closer to real time, but also gives you more easy to be able to do different things. And also what is here so important is that also events are used to be able to make your AI solution aware of what is happening around her. If any kind of changes are happening, you can stream that through an event stream directly to your AI. Data governance, that's something that I highlighted. And Azure Purview is one of the options that we have. Nowadays there are multiple options, but you need to take one. You need to have one integrated. And another thing here is important is that the value that is brought by such a solution is much, much higher than the costs. Why I'm saying this? Because this kind of solution like Azure Purview or from other third parties are not cheap. Nevertheless, it's resolving an important governance component that you need to have in place before, and I'm trying to bold here, before starting to do AI integration. Because you need to control the data, you need to do the data catalog, you need to know exactly who has access to what kind of data, what is sensible data, what is not, and so on. If you have 3 or 4 different data structure, you might say, I'm feeling good, I'm okay. But if you're in an ecosystem where you have, for example, 10 terabytes of data or 50 terabytes of data, or a full one of a corporate with 100,000 people, things are not so easy as you would think. The last one that I want to highlight is the FinOps. For FinOps, we don't have a solution, or for Focus, because FinOps 2.0 is now Focus. We don't have one solution that fits all. You need to take all the stages. You need to see what kind of systems you use. At least for Focus and for FinOps, I would say that the maturity level where we are now, it's not high enough, and there's a lot of things that still needs to be done manually or overseen partially uh, by teams, by technical teams. Now, the last thing before closing the session, this is a diagram that I really love it from Microsoft. And why I love it? Because, let me take the pen. Okay. So if you take a look where you have the AI component is here and here. Everything else that is in this box is built additionally to the existing system to be able to manage, to be able to run the AI services and Azure OpenAI services that you are integrating. Why I want to highlight this? Because an AI initiative that you start, it's not only that 1 or 2 service. It's more about the additional teams that you need to have in place to be able to build that solution. Security, networking, storage, policies, um, monitoring, observability, you name it, all of them needs to be built, needs to be taken into account. Okay, jumping, because we don't have enough time, and let's jump to the end. So, we talk about what are the key services, what are the key challenges that we need to consider. The most important takeaway is the following. Start the AI journey on a cloud solution only after you've done the cloud modernization part. Because in most of the cases, your existing solution that you have in place in cloud might not be ready to manage the workloads, the data, and the security aspects that needs to be in place for your AI workloads. You need to have a data-driven decision making. You need to do real-time analytics, scaling, and all of this. And what I see now on the market is that most of the solutions, the cloud solutions, are pretty old. Usually they have at least 3 or 4 years old. not only this, is that most of them were built on cloud during 2020, 2023, where there was a fast forward to moving on cloud, and then customers forget to invest in the cloud modernizations. And there's some spaces that you need to handle, you need to tackle. Thank you. Thank you for having me today. If there are questions, this is a good moment in time. And otherwise, you
No.
can then you can chat GPT me on LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn I will bing you on Google. Let's say in this way, if you're using Microsoft terminology. So feel free to reach me on LinkedIn. I'm more than open
So
to.
there's no question, but I got some questions. So how are you using AI? Are you using any in production at the moment in your current workplace?
Yes, internally and also on the customer side.
Yeah,
Something that I'm now working, and this is what I highlighted the diagram for Microsoft. It is not final, but if you check my LinkedIn, I think in 2 or 3 weeks times I will be able to publish an article. Is what is the balance between AI engineers and data scientists that you have in a company, and all the other technical skills that you need to be able to implement an AI solution. I'm talking about developers, I'm talking about infrastructure people, DevOps, data, and so on, because this is one of the challenges that I think that at least in IT services where I'm active is
yeah,
people just see AI, AI, AI. That's 100% correct. But when you build an AI solution, it's not only about that AI component. It's more
yeah,
widely, and all,
yeah,
and sometimes the effort required to build that end-to-end solution, it's more effort on non-AI skills. Let's say in this way, because you need to be able to run that infrastructure to run that system.
yeah. Because you need to make sure the AI is ethical, safety, and security as well. So when you build it, it's a lot to consider.
Yeah,
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 because I
exactly.
know that at the moment trying to use a co-pilot mindset now with the new agent to have everyone, all the engineers, like even AI engineers, security engineer, to have the agent mindset or use AI in some way in the project, in a way to
Yeah.
adopt
So
it.
if 5 years ago, let's say during an interview, would ask somebody sorting algorithm or how you do a sorting in Java and .NET, and he will say, "Well, I call the sort or whatever function do different things." I think
Yeah,
that in 2 years' time will be in a time when you will go to an interview and you are in the development space. They will ask you, "Okay, what kind of agents you are using a multi-agent solution to solve this problem?" Because more or less this is the trend that we are the trend that we are going.
yeah. If all industry adapt to like AI, then you might go to that in next year, hopefully.
Yeah, and also
Okay. So thanks for joining, Radu. Uh, yeah, it's a pleasure to have you, and it's an amazing session. So any question, we can just ping you and stuff regarding the session. Thank you.